Salman Rushdie, the famous author, recently said that the first thing we need as human beings, as babies actually, other than being held and being fed and being kept safe, the first thing we ask for is, tell me a story. His point was that the need for storytelling in human beings is so innate, such a core part of who we are that it never leaves us. We see this all around us. But what happens when the storyteller seizes the story and takes it out of the hands of the person who lives the story or takes the action that is the story? Who tells your story? These are the questions I want to get at today on the 41st Feedback Deaf live stream, an ongoing conversation about culture, memory, meaning, and life. And welcome. I am Saby Reyes-Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. Today on my mind, I have two parallel disputes between doers and storytellers, performers and the people who tell the story of those performers. So I'm going to start with the jazz musician Brad Mehldau and his response to New York Times critic Jon Caramanica, and then go into another public spat between NBA superstar Jaylen Brown and sports media kingpin Stephen A. Smith. And then I'll get into Drake's 3 new albums that were released all on the same day. I would urge you to hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons if you like what I'm laying down, and also to check out other clips on the channel. But most of all, to comment. I love to hear from you. Yes, this is a monologue, but I love turning it into a dialogue. Okay, so I've spoken at least twice now about the New York Times's recent 30 greatest living American songwriters list that they published in late April, at least 2 times. This may actually be the 4th time that I'm bringing it up. And even yesterday, I played a clip, or 2 days ago on the most recent live stream, I played a clip of New York Times staff members defending their picks for that list. I'm going to just drop you into one short section of that clip once again to give you context for what Brad Mehldau was responding to, and then we'll go from there. But let me actually set this up before I jump into the clips. Clearly, Salman Rushdie is correct. We have a need for stories. We seem to have this need also this is just crystallizing for me lately, even though I've been thinking about this for almost my whole life. We have this need for someone to tell us a story, or the story, about what we just collectively lived through. Because as I've said before, I listen to a lot of sports talk. I listen to more sports talk podcasts or videos than I do music-themed stuff, because I write mainly about music and talk mainly about music, and sports talk is my way of just giving my mind a break. But there are some obvious parallels there. It hadn't occurred to me until 2 days ago, actually right when I was on my way here to do one of these streams, that everything I've ever thought about with music journalists, music critics, interceding in the relationship between the listener and the music, all of those feelings I've had and all of those thoughts and all of that attention that I've paid to that equation or relationship, or what I call the signal chain between the music and the listener, might boil down to something much, much, much simpler than had ever occurred to me. And I didn't say this last time, but everything that music journalists talk about, and you'll hear this in Jon Caramanica's statement that I'm going to play you, and then Brad Mehldau's response, and Brad Mehldau's framing or I think exposing the intention of the music critic in a way that I think hits it right on the head. But I'll set it up a little bit more. This whole idea that music critics are able to confer relevance on music, to give it a glow and say, hey, this is something that we should be paying attention to now. It is of our moment. It's important. We are the channels by which music finds a place in the zeitgeist. And I've been thinking about this and talking about this as long as I've been a really involved music listener. So probably since my preteens, the age of 12 or so, this has been on my mind because I watch, I would go out and pursue music and have a response to it, and then watch as all these other factors start to shape and color the people around me, their perception of music, and then they start talking about and even relating to music relative to the sort of guardrails that other people, writers, set up for them. And I'm like, why do we need that? Why do we need that? What are we doing? Why do we need to check ourselves against the collective? And I wonder now, as of the other day, whether music critics are unknowing agents of the music business. They would never look at it that way. They're like, no, we are actually here to keep them honest, to keep the artist and the industry honest. We're here to represent you, the listener. But what if this entire idea of what's relevant or not is just an excuse for the music industry to, oh my God, this is going to drive me crazy. There's a kid making noise in the other room who obviously I think has some sort of, anyway, what if it's just a vehicle for the music industry who knowingly would sign more artists than they knew would succeed? Like this had been the traditional business model of the music industry. They would, for every 9 artists or for every 10 artists they sign, 9 of them would fail. And they knew this going in. So it's like, all right, well, since we're basically rolling dice at a roulette table anyway, why don't we have these people give a shine of importance on some of the music we put out, because that's just going to lead people to buy some of that stuff, right? Why don't, like, they're doing our job for us. They are steering the public in one way or another to some of the product that we put out, most of which is going to fail anyway. So fine, let them do it. Let them think they're not working for us. Right? Basically, what occurred to me was, what if music criticism is just an inverted commercial for the record companies? Now, music critics are not employed by record companies. They were traditionally employed by magazines and then later by online outlets or some combination thereof. And the publishers are not shareholders in the record business. Those are two separate businesses. But from the record label's perspective, you might as well be you're working for us. And you don't even know it. Now, in sports media, this relationship is more explicit and more straightforward, right? What I'm suggesting is that music critics have been in collusion with record labels unbeknownst to the critics. They would never look at it that way, that they are representatives of the music industry. They look at themselves as the opposite, but they are actually in collusion with them. It's like you have this business model that requires, or not requires, that by nature operates on this premise that the public is not going to buy all of your products. Some of it is going to be discarded and chucked aside. Some of it's not going to be paid attention to. We are the gatekeepers and the mechanism by which the public is given some inkling, some push, some sense of direction, or in some cases, just the public just follows our lead and decides what to pay attention to. So although critics don't look at their relationship that way, they're in total collusion with the music business. In sports media, the collusion is more literal. Yes, we had traditionally had sports journalists, newspaper columnists who worked, much like music critics did, for newspapers. But in the modern era, and for oh God, the past 3 decades at this point, the sports media commentator, the sports talk figure, has been somebody who works for a network that broadcasts the games. So if you're on ESPN or Fox, you're working for a network that is effectively a business partner of the sports leagues that you're supposed to be commenting on and analyzing and critiquing. So that collusion is much more, they're not upfront about it. The sports, right, the figures like Stephen A. Smith, who I will get to, they don't identify themselves that way, but this is exactly what they are. They're salespeople for the leagues. They want to drum up a lot of attention. It's basically daytime soaps for men, daytime soap operas, right? Like they just want to create all this conversation and narrative. They shape narratives around what happens in sports, around athletes. They tell the athlete's story, which is the same thing music critics do. Music critics profess to tell us the story of our engagement with music as time goes on. They profess to record for us what culture is doing in real time. Now, I would say they color and they invent what culture is doing. But they look at themselves as just observers. Sports media people, sports commentators, they would identify themselves the same way. But both of these camps are guilty, and by guilty, I mean throw the book at them and throw them under the jail, of taking control of the story in a way that I think is really, really egregious and unhealthy and just bad and actually mean-spirited. Now, we do, as Salman Rushdie said, have a need for stories. When I was thinking about this, I was like, well, man, in sports, it's even the sports talk figure is even more unnecessary than in music, because in sports, the games, like the legend and the myth, is just based on what actually happens in the games. Like the games are played, they are won or lost, amazing things happen or don't, and that is history right there. It's like the fact that we have all these other people chirping around that is more unnecessary. But then I thought about it, I'm like, actually, that's not true. as Salman Rushdie suggested, we have this innate need to be told a story, even a story we are participating in. Why is it that you go to a baseball game or a football game and something miraculous happens, and if a photographer captures that in a photo, it immortalizes the moment in a way, even if you were there, it makes that moment accrue so much more of a magnetism. There's something about capturing it for posterity. Even if you watched it on TV, even if your brother called you on the phone, and you will always remember that moment as a part of your life. Someone capturing it and inscribing it in some way and telling the story back to you who lived it feels amazing. And this is what sports writers have done since the invention of that profession. They take something that is nonverbal. I mean, yes, in all sports, they have announcers who are literally narrating what's happening. And they always do this with the good ones, do this with a lot of flair. They do this with a ton of personality, but that's an in real time storyteller that we want while the game is on, right? Like all of these sporting events have this, whether it used to be on the radio or once it started to become broadcast, or whether it was on TV where you could look at it, the game happening with your own eyes, but yet there's someone narrating as it goes along. So even in the moment, we have a narrator. And then later, we like to, those of us who love sports, we like to go back and re-experience the story of a game we just watched through someone else's telling. Right? And in spite of what I just said about music critics inventing culture as an extension, basically like a sales, they are unknowing salespeople. The fact of the matter is, we as human beings have this need to contextualize what we are living through in the moment, to feel like there is a story going on around our experiences, and that there's some sort of collective happening, some buzz, some synergistic something in the air that you can't see but you can feel. And we like to go to writers, or increasingly YouTubers, on-camera narrators. But narrators, we had this on the radio too. We like to go to those people to tell the story back to us. So as much as I might rail on music critics and armchair quarterback sports talk, sports comments, sports analysts, and you will hear Brad Mehldau and you will hear Jaylen Brown slam these people, as much as we might do that, I do have to acknowledge, wait a minute. We've all wanted the story. We want these people to set the stage for us so that we can feel like we're living the moment, that the moment is the stage and it's just sort of all around us, but also that we're able to sit in the seats in the darkened theater and watch someone's telling. And I do think that's a beautiful thing, because I have made several statements, and I'm going to when I talk about the Drake new albums and Drake versus Kendrick, the Drake versus Kendrick beef, Drake versus Kendrick Lamar from a couple of years back, where I was like, man, pop culture wants to kill you. Like this invention of what we are living through. If you leave it to other people, if you're too passive and let other people tell that story, it will lead to horribly destructive things. I'll get into that in the second segment. But that may be true. There may be all these people who I've identified as bad actors, i.e. music critics, sports analysts, who put too much of themselves. They put too much of a spin on the story. They want to control the story, which is the same thing that governments, intelligence agencies, empires, religious groups, this is what they do. They control narratives, right? And as much as I disparage that, the fact is, culture is something that we have a sense of that generates organically in the moment. Right? So putting all of my reservations and in fact my chastising of those people who raise their hand and say, I will be the storyteller for all of us. As much as I may malign those people and their intentions, the fact is we want a sense of a story unfolding around us. And the way it occurred to me this morning as I was walking here was, when you look back on photographs of a certain time period, I saw one fairly recently of a record store. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt of this store, Record Archive in Rochester, New York. This shirt was not around way back then, but there was a Record Archive location near the University of Rochester when I first started there in 1990. And I say the word started loosely. I was matriculated and attended, but I smoked a lot of pot and listened to music and hung out at the radio station and left school, dropped out twice. So, but I remember seeing a picture of that same intersection where Record Archive was. It's on Mount Hope Avenue here in Rochester. And from 1990, the same year that I started, I'm like, man, it didn't feel like that. Like what I'm seeing, those cars, everything looks different to me than what I remembered it feeling like. It looks so old now. It looks so antiquated. It looks the same as like when I was a kid looking back on photos from like the 60s or like the 40s. The way the cars, the colors, even the color palette even looked different. And we don't notice those changes until we're past the moment. We sense something is happening around us, but it's invisible until it's gone, until it's back in the rear view. And then we see photos and we're like, wow, that was it. Like those haircuts didn't look strange to me at the time. Those car designs, like the shapes didn't look strange. It was just like air. It was just like the air we breathed, the water we swam in. Hence, this is where writers come in, where people we appoint or who appoint themselves, but who appoint themselves because they know we have an appetite for this, including me. I include myself in this. We want to feel like there's a setting to the moment we're living through. And the different periods in our lives have different types of luster around them. It's like what came to me this morning was what I was saying. Light has a certain quality at different times of day. At 6:30 in the morning on a summer day, the light has a certain luster. So the music you loved maybe at age, I don't know, 5 or 6, maybe let's say has the same kind of luster as early morning light. Then the music you loved as a teenager, in your formative years, where you really fell in love with music, that sort of feels like, I don't know, 11 a.m., noon kind of light. And then, you go on through the various stages and you want to punctuate the different periods of your life that you live through with different lighting or different quality of light. And this is where culture comes in. And again, this happens organically. I don't think it requires people to relay it back to us, but they are a huge driver, obviously, of how it happens or how it solidifies into our collective awareness. And so the question is, though, who's punctuating those chapters for you? Who's telling your story? And if you're too passive and let them do it and just take them at face value, take them at their word, are you giving too much away? It occurred to me on the way here, Jesus and Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and Muhammad did not write their own stories. It was writers, scribes, who recorded their stories. I thought about that. I was like, oh my God. Think about that for a second. Just let that sink in. And then think about all the different permutations of each of those three people's messages. All the different, outcroppings or permutations of Christianity that exist. All the different versions of Buddhism, all the different versions of Islam. Those guys did not write their own stories. They entrusted it to writers. Or I think probably in the Buddha's case, maybe there was some oral tradition. I have to look that up for Muhammad and Siddhartha. Did they leave it to oral? But still, it's basically the same thing. So if even those people didn't take the pen into their own hands, this is why they say the pen is mightier than the sword. They entrusted or even solicited someone else to record their message and tell their story and to frame it for the rest of us. That is mind-blowing to me. Maybe it's obvious to you because this had never occurred to me. But it's like, wow, if even they did that, if even they weren't like, no, I'm taking the pen into my own hands. I'm going to write this down. I'm the one who knows what I have to say. I'm the one who lived this experience. Let me tell it to you. But they didn't. So if that's good enough for them, then there must be something in this idea that we select certain people to be our eyes and ears. And even more so than that, it's like to be our sensibility, to embody sensibility for us. But again, what happens when they take control of the story? And when they're telling your story, our story, through their own distortions, and we let them do it. So, on that note, let me cue up Jon Caramanica here talking about Billy Joel, and we'll get into Brad Mehldau's response.
About what songwriting is. And songwriting is such a peculiar thing. It has so much baggage. It comes with attachment to certain communities, certain subgenres, and engaged fans who have an extremely fixed idea of what constitutes songcraft.
And what do you think that idea is?
I think it's a heroic white man with a guitar struggling through his emotions, sitting in a room, no collaborators, no contact with the outside world, perhaps alcohol, perhaps drugs, accessing some kind of pure emotional truth and putting it in a rock, country, or otherwise roots-affiliated genre. Folk, sure.
Singer-songwriter.
Yes. To me, as much as I enjoy some of that music, I do not mistake that for the totality of American song. I do not mistake that for the best examples of songcraft. And what I was grateful for in the room is that every person in their way with their own personal frameworks that they came in the room with was willing to say, it's not that. It's not that, but it's not only that.
Yeah, you know what? I played the wrong clip here. Actually, I meant to play the clip where he talks about Billy Joel. But it's okay. So that's not exactly the wrong clip. That does set up the context. Caramonica also said something specific about Billy Joel, which Brad Mehldau responds to. So I'm going to go ahead and read from Brad Mehldau, excuse me, his Substack titled "Watching Rome Burn." I will read you the description. I should have linked to this in the show notes. I will add them. Watching Rome Burn, writing about arts, primarily music, literature, and film, and then philosophy, theology, politics, personal memoir. I forgot to look up whether I have ever reviewed any of Brad Mehldau's albums. I believe I have. I should have looked that up. I'm looking now. Maybe I haven't. I feel like I have, like I've done the show preview, or anyway, who cares about that? So let's see here. Jon Caramanica is a bad cliche is the name of his Substack piece. So I'll read a little bit from it because this pinpoints so well all of the reservations I've felt like pretty much my entire listening life about these people who take it upon themselves to be culture for us, to taste make, to gatekeep, to be the arbiters of what art is valuable and what isn't. So Mehldau writes, New York Times pop critic Jon Caramanica followed up on the decision to not include Billy Joel on the greatest songwriters, quote unquote, list, one of the most arbitrary, inconsequential pieces of music criticism, quote unquote, the newspaper has delivered in my almost 4 decades of reading it. He did this in a video chat with his colleagues. He yelled this glibly, as he often does in other videos and podcasts I've tried to listen to of him, or at a round table with his colleagues. And Mehldau is saying he does this with supreme self-confidence, taken in with his own supposed edification. So he goes on to quote Caramonica. Billy Joel is I can't do that voice, but Billy Joel is a very good example of a person who writes 1 or 1.5. Let me start again. Billy Joel is a very good example of a person who writes 1 or 1.5 kinds of songs really well. That also people before him wrote really well, and people after him wrote really well. I like Billy Joel. People I love like Billy Joel, but we're making a list of the 30 greatest American songwriters. You're not only saying what they're great at, you're saying what they aren't doing. And Billy Joel exists in pre-existing traditions. He's good at it. Some days I think great, but you got to draw the line somewhere. So Mehldau continues. I try to read and listen to Jon Caramanica because I have a paid subscription to the New York Times, and I'm a musician as well as a music fan. But Caramanica has never illuminated anything about music for me, and I'm pretty sure he never will. Jon Caramanica spends the majority of his time fawning over pop confections like Taylor Swift, Bad Bunny, or Casey Musgraves. The pop that matters to Jon Caramanica is pop that matters largely for tween and teenaged girls. Is he not aware of the irony of his situation? Is he not aware of the irony of his situation? There is indeed pop that matters, but Jon seems obsessed with the bubblegum variety. And then he speaks dismissively of Billy Joel. What's going on here? The thing is, this is par for the course in the New York Times. Jon Caramanica is the latest iteration of a perennial figure, the know-nothing pop critic who thinks he knows something. He personifies the problem that has always existed in criticism of pop music, and historically, jazz as well. If anyone remembers the bad old days of jazz critic Peter Watrous, they know what I mean. Namely, Jon Caramanica doesn't know anything about the nuts and bolts of music. He's taken in with pop music as a cultural phenomenon, not as a musical phenomenon. That is an extremely, extremely, extremely important point. That's hugely important. So Mehldau elaborates on this. I do not mean to set up an us. Let me start again. I don't mean to set up an us and them between musicians and everyone else. I'm going to start again, a third time. Sorry. Take 3. I don't mean to set up an us and them between musicians and everyone else. There are plenty of people who do not have musical background or education and can understand that Billy Joel's craft is deep and innovative. John Caramanica, alas, is not one of them. So he confidently yells that Billy Joel, quote, writes 1 or 1.5 kinds of songs really well, that also people before him wrote really well, and people after him wrote really well, unquote. This displays utter ignorance of the subject he is paid to write about. It is so deeply untrue. Here's the part I want to highlight even more about what Brad Mehldau is saying or writing here. John Caramanica is like the guy I went to high school with in the 1980s. The guy who listened to Depeche Mode, Joy Division, and Talking Heads and refused to listen to Led Zeppelin, Bad Company, Heart, Aerosmith, or Billy Joel for that matter, and any number of other bands. He's a snob who wants to be hip, so he becomes a critic. He listens to music not because he loves music, but because of how it defines his understanding of himself. Boy, that's really, really, really powerful. And it gets to something that I've intuited in my gut for a long time, but never quite formed in words quite so precisely as Brad Mehldau just did right there, which is that, like, I've always known people organize themselves into social tribes around musical aesthetics. Like that I have said, in many different ways, whether it's with friends or written about it or said it on here or said it on my Substack. People, they see the different aesthetics between different types of music, and then they interpret those as being somehow more pure or valuable. So say if you're like a jazz, well, actually I can't even say if you're a jazz lover because there are many different camps within jazz. Say you were like a bebop lover, right? Or actually, you know what? Say you loved avant-garde jazz. You might have been somebody who looked down on previous evolutions of jazz up to that point. Like you might have been like, well, no, I don't want to hear the John Coltrane Quartet do my favorite things or something. I'm past that. I only want to listen to Coltrane and Alice Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders and people like that. Deconstructing music, like that's the only stuff I care about. I'm not saying everybody who loves avant-garde and free jazz felt that way, or Ornette Coleman or whatever. I'm not saying even that the musicians looked down on previous types of jazz. I know Sun Ra, for example, who I will be talking about tomorrow, he didn't abandon earlier forms of jazz, even as he expanded into more and more out there experimental avant-garde expressions of it. But you can have that kind of snob. And that's just one example. Any musical style, any broad genre. Within metal, you have this, you have people who love drum and bass music, which is a form of electronic dance music, who look down on, later versions of that, like EDM, or they don't consider that real. People have a habit of pinpointing the music they love and the aesthetics around that and staking their identity on those things. And they mistake the fact that they love a certain type of music with the truth, which is why when Brad Mehldau says, John Caramanica is not somebody who loves music, I think even the critics who love music are equally dangerous and equally a force for destruction in the world, because critics who love music, they engage in the same exact thing John Caramanica is doing. They're like, well, my sense of transcendence when I hear this music right here must be the truth. You must be on board with me when I feel that. There's got to be something wrong with you if you're not. We must all share this together. It's like, that's not the way music works. And what's interesting is that just about everybody who has ever been near this profession of music journalism, you'll hear them say, oh, music is subjective, or you'll hear the readers say, oh yeah, it's all subjective. And it's funny because they sound like religious people to me who just by rote reflex say, oh, Jesus is love. And then they go on and do the exact opposite. Like they go on and behave and pursue religious religious practices and religious rules that go completely against the tolerance and love that they just said Jesus represents. They'll say it, but then they actually go in the opposite direction. And I hear music critics say this so much, like, it's all subjective, but you're not trying to acknowledge the subjectivity at all in your work. They don't do it. They are, in fact, mobilizing you, the reader, in the opposite direction. They are trying to steer us all towards, well, I love this and I think this is valuable, so you must do that too. Let's all share that together. That's what culture is me speaking through my aesthetic filter and my own personal taste. Otherwise, if it was all subjective, then why would you have to rate albums and critique them? Like, don't say it's all subjective and then speak to me as if you are completely misunderstand that your response is not the truth. I would believe you if you didn't speak like somebody, like an evangelical, who thinks their experience of God must be the one that they have to convince you of. I don't think that matters. You should be able to have your own transcendent experience with music and not have to convert people. Music is not a missionary form. It's not, you don't convert people to loving your music. And if you do, you're religious and not, you're a religious music lover. You're not just somebody who's in tune with music. And in any case, Mehldau goes on to say, yeah, let me read a little bit more of this because this is important. So he says, Caramonica listens to music like a critic in the worst sense of the word. He doesn't listen because he loves music. He listens with an eye on how he can situate himself in the social strata as a pop music critic and fan. That means doing gymnastics to show he's hip enough to understand the zeitgeist of Bad Bunny. It also means dismissing Billy Joel. And what do I mean when I say Jon Caramanica knows nothing about music? Well, first of all, I say that from the perspective of a musician. Billy Joel's recorded oeuvre shows him as an innovative melodist, harmonist, rhythmist, and orchestra/producer. And this all plays out in his songwriting craft. So, basically what he's saying is Caramonica has no background in music, which I talked about this in the last time, where Rick Beato's like, what do these people have degrees in? They're all Northeast. Most of the people on that panel, two of them or three of them were like Ivy League educated, and they didn't study music. I would slightly differ from Mehldau and Beato there because I don't think you need to be trained in the mechanics of music, the formal theory behind it, to talk about the mechanics of it. Like, I don't have formal education in music. However, I have made music. I think of music very much in terms of the craft, the layering, the interrelationship between the various instrumentation in it, rhythm and harmony, to the best that I can put that into words. Like, I'll use visual imagery as a representation of music. It's not, I won't say that's a G flat fifth, minor or whatever. I'm not saying that's not important. I'm saying that music is a nonverbal medium that I can then use images, excuse me, to describe. And I feel that because I receive musical ideas all the time, and because I create it, it qualifies me to talk about it. Now, I think for people who play jazz, that is hard to swallow, because jazz is by definition a schooled form. It's like you don't play sitar in Indian classical music unless you're trained on how to do it. But I don't think you have to be trained to listen to sitar or to listen to jazz. You just have to have repeat exposure to it enough that you start forming your own way of understanding the various nuances of the style. But that aside, his point about Caramanica using music to pinpoint where he stands socially is right on the money. It's like music critics have a social agenda they're pushing. And it's just amazing to think that somebody like that can take himself that seriously and not understand, like, dude, you sound like a parody. Like, Saturday Night Live could have scripted somebody to sound like you. In fact, the movie High Fidelity is making fun of people like you, kind of. More making fun of music snob fans and record store people, but I mean, to then, it's bad enough that he does this musically, but to then go one step higher in self-importance and then try and encompass this sense of like, well, it's socially important to not emphasize white guys with guitars, is just so noxious that the New York Times would employ people like this. And I spent my whole last episode talking about why I hate the New York Times and why I think it's a platform of class warfare. I don't think it's an accident that they do this, that they platform people who see music as a means to push social agendas. But the lack of self-awareness is quite staggering there. And so I want to move on to Jaylen Brown, who responded in a very similar way as Brad Mehldau, actually. And I'll give you some background here because there's a lot. I want to play 50 different clips. And even if you're not interested in sports, I think this is important, especially if you're interested in music, because there are lots of parallels here. And I think just overall, as a social phenomenon, in terms of what it is we want as the public and what we want from performers, whether they be musicians, artists, actors, or athletes, and what it is we're willing to subject them to, and how we're willing to pin them down to view them a certain way, and how cruel I think that can be. I would urge you to stick with this, even if you don't care about sports. But if you do, great. So, quick context here. Jaylen Brown is widely spoken about and considered to be one of the one of the best, one of the top 10 players in the NBA currently. Like he's like one of the upper echelon NBA players in the league today. He's a superstar. And so he's on the Boston Celtics. He has won a championship with the Boston Celtics. He is seen as he is seen as part of a 1-2 punch. He and another player named Jason Tatum are the core nucleus, like are the 1 and the 2 lead dogs on that team, and they have won a championship together. This season, Jason Tatum was hurt for a lot of the season, and the Celtics were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, and that's considered disappointing in spite of the fact that Jason Tatum wasn't there. However, Jaylen Brown has been getting on Twitch and doing a live stream the whole season after games, which rubs a lot of other players or older generation players the wrong way. So one thing I didn't mention is that the sports talk industrial complex employs former players all the time. And there has always been this really uncomfortable, like palpable tension between people who write about sports, most of whom never played or are failed athletes. Stephen A. Smith is you can barely even call him a failed athlete. That's how minimal and inconsequential his athletic ability has been. He claims to have played in college and then got injured, but the story doesn't add up. And it's sort of been bubbling for a few years now that maybe he just made the whole thing up, that he never actually played. So he is a non-athlete. And non-athletes, both black and white, enjoy lording the pen over the more physically capable male, masculine power of athletes and even feminine power of athletes. This dynamic is evident all throughout sports talk. Even people who played in college, Jason Whitlock is a mortal enemy of Stephen A. Smith. He's a conservative-leaning sports talk commentator. He constantly refers to himself as a former player. It's like, dude, you're not a professional athlete. You are somebody who resents physically capable people and uses words to demean them. He calls athletes idiots all the time. It's very much like the nerdy guy, even though he played, he played football in college. It's very much like the verbal nerdy guy against the jock dynamic. And again, the pen is mightier than the sword, or the power of the word. For decades, newspaper columnists lorded this power over athletes and presented athletes to the public and often framed them as like bad teammates. They would get quotes about them, like digging dirt on them, et cetera, et cetera. And there, like I said, there's been a palpable tension, which gets more interesting when athletes start to get jobs in the media side by side with these guys who never played. And then they sort of turn tail and start doing the same thing to people who are currently playing now. It's a very strange dynamic, and it's constantly bubbling right there. It's not even under the surface. It's bubbling right at the surface. You'll see these tensions play out. Like, who the fuck are you to tell me what's what? And then current athletes will then say the same thing to former athletes who are commenting on their game. And all along, just like in music criticism, there's this presumption, well, we're just doing our jobs. Like, why don't you cooperate with us? We're just doing our job. It's like, well, are you doing your job, or are you weaponizing the power of the word to misrepresent someone, and really to hurt someone who's playing a sport, who has no power to counter your narrative. This is what Stephen A. Smith, who is widely spoken of as the #1 sports talk figure in America. He's the most popular. He's the loudest. He is outrageously entertaining. I mean, he is an entertainer. I'll play you a tiny clip, not of him talking about Jaylen Brown. I'll play a clip of him talking about something completely different. It's political, but you'll get a feel in this like very short soundbite of how animated Stephen A. Smith tends to be.
And for the first time, the black athlete in a major college sports, which is football and basketball, have an opportunity to literally redistribute wealth on behalf of themselves and their families for the first time in history.
Okay, so the reason I'm laughing is because Stephen A. Smith talks about everything on that level. Like he's like turned up. And I have to say, he is wildly entertaining. A friend of mine's wife, who actually is going to start appearing on this channel, we're going to start doing live streams together. Her name is Erica Bryant. She doesn't care about sports at all. Her husband, my friend Rajesh, loves sports. I may even be watching some of the NBA playoffs with him and his son and his son's friends, which is always fun. Or we have a plan to do that. But Erica and the daughters don't give a damn. They walk in the room and they're like, well, it's pretty funny. But she's like, who's that guy? One time she asked me, she's like, who's that guy? Like I was at the doctor's office or like getting my car fixed or something. And I see this guy and the sound is off and he's just like yelling and yelling. And it's like, what is he talking about that is so important? He's so worked up and I'm watching him. And I'm like, oh, is it this guy? And I play a clip of Stephen A. Smith. He goes, yes, that's him. That's him. So that's Stephen A. He is, I am guessing, or I have heard people talk about the highest paid in his profession. He has the #1 show. And he is a mouthpiece. He does late night talk shows. He's been on soap operas. He likes appearing on soap operas. He likes General Hospital. And there is even talk of him running for office. Like, no lie. He's hinted at potentially running for president, which would be totally surreal. But in this context, yes, he's entertaining, but he's a bully. He weaponizes his words, and he hurts athletes. He says things that are disparaging all the time. And even with one basketball player named Kwame Brown, actively campaigned for years to smear this guy's name and call him a bust. And then he sort of half-heartedly, sort of non-apology, apologized and still didn't acknowledge what he had done. He framed this guy as a failure, as a joke, basically, and never once acknowledged how painful that is. Now, Kwame Brown has resurfaced as a YouTuber, and he's awesome. And he's a great basketball commentator, actually. And talks about how, well, wait a minute, you framed me as a bust. Like you recorded me in history as a failure, but I've got a life, I've got a farm, I've got kids. It's like, how can you just pin that tag on somebody when you never played? Stephen A. Smith has never truly in good faith responded because he can't. Because people who take it upon themselves to be the scribes, just like the people that wrote down the Bible, they will never in a million years. John Caramanica is constitutionally incapable of questioning whether the way he's framing his subject, i.e. the people who actually do things, who make music and play the fucking games, these people, they are cognitively blind. Their brains cannot consider, wait a minute, is it my place to frame an athlete or a performer or a musician in this way? Am I being unfair? Is it fair that I don't do the thing that they are doing, and yet I'm the one who has the power of the pen? They'll never do that. Because to do that would be to admit that you're standing on a house of cards. You may be getting paid $100 million or whatever Stephen A. Smith is getting paid. You may have one of the most plum media gigs ever if you're Jon Caramanica, or at least in terms of music journalism gigs, employed by the New York Times as a high-ranking staffer there. But what are you doing? What is it that you're actually contributing? No, if these people face that question, they will have an existential crisis. And they can't afford to do that. They certainly can't afford to keep showing up for work and admit that, because it would completely expose this as the sham that it is. So they keep taking the check, and even more so than the check, they keep drinking the potion that tells them they are important and they are necessary. Because could you imagine waking up in the morning one day going, wait, everything I've done is inconsequential. Everything I've done is on the backs of people who do things. I didn't do shit except satisfy the public's urge for a storyteller. And in fact, I did so in bad faith. I mistold the story. These people will never, ever, ever, ever admit that. They can't. It's too. It would their whole identity would implode, would fall apart, and that's an uncomfortable experience to have. So Stephen A. Smith continues to do what he does. Yes, he's entertaining. He lies all the time. He lies on his former colleagues. He betrays his former colleagues. He can get real nasty with these kinds of things. And what inevitably happens now that more and more athletes have their own media platforms is the old guard gatekeeper, quote unquote, journalists are like, you can't do that. You can't be the ones who, you're too biased. Like this new media thing, we scoff at that. We're the real journalists. Yeah, because they're terrified that they'll be irrelevant. They keep reminding us, these sports talk guys, they keep reminding us of how shitty and unsatisfying podcasts by athletes are. Is that actually true? I've seen some athlete podcasts that are damn good. They keep saying, well, they don't call balls and strikes the way they should because they're too busy, they're too biased, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you're too fucking scared that these people are going to put you out of work and your ass is going to be on the curb like yesterday's trash, just like the people you spoke of in a very insensitive way. This is the thing that has always gotten me, is that both music critics and sports commentators are armchair quarterbacks who snicker and sneer at people who are doing something they could never do. This is why I write about music from a different perspective as somebody who makes it. And I may blast an artist for their intentions. That's another thing I forgot to say. To counter Brad Mehldau and Rick Beato, it's like, well, I'm very responsive to the emotional tone being conveyed in music. And I have had many artists tell me that I do pick up on, or at least when I was talking about their stuff, they felt like I was perceiving where they were coming from emotionally. Now, I've had some artists say I'm reading too much into it, but that to me is extremely important. And I don't think that you can be completely like oblivious to that and still be talking about scales and the theoretical mechanics of music. Again, I'm not saying those are not important, but you can get lost in that and not in the feeling that comes across. So people, armchair quarterbacks, it's like they have this need to pin down and confine the performer. They're like, we get to tell your story. It's almost like reminds me of like when you see footage of like a large animal, like an elephant or something, and like you see these guys with ropes on one on each limb and one around the neck and they're trying to like corral this very powerful being into submission. That to me feels like what critics and sports talk commentators are doing. It's like, no. We're taming you. We're bringing you into captivity by putting the bars of our telling, our story around you. You will exist within the bars of our story. And they don't like it when people clap back at them. They really don't respond well. They do not take this well. They double down. Because again, the existential crisis is probably whispering in their ear right there behind them. They have to flex more, not so much to defend themselves against the performer, the athlete, the musician who says, hey, fuck you. In this case, Jaylen Brown literally said, fuck Stephen A. Smith. Right? It's not so much to defend against that, it's to defend against the existential crisis that's nipping at their heels. To say, yeah, you may have gotten paid $100 million, Stephen A., but your life is built on what? What did you do? You performed, you're entertaining. What did you do? You worked hard. You made a lot of noise. You gave us a lot of moments. But you exist because of athletes. Without athletes, you are nothing. Nothing. And you have the audacity to then flex when these guys clap back at you. I want to play you a little bit of this clip where a couple of other people are responding to someone else's response to Stephen A. Smith. Actually, you know what? Let's go back a step and so this is a podcast that is hosted or that features two former NFL players, actually three sometimes. LaShawn McCoy, who's one of my favorite media figures, and Emmanuel Acho. And then occasionally another former NFL player named TJ Houshmandzadeh. And they discuss these issues all the time. So here is LaShawn McCoy and Emmanuel Acho responding to Jaylen Brown's response to Stephen A. Smith. Actually, you know what? Let me give a little more context, which I forgot. Sorry. Before I forget this. Jaylen Brown had to go through a significant chunk of this season without his co-pilot, I guess, Jason Tatum. And when the Boston Celtics were eliminated from the playoffs in the first round, which was a disappointment, he went on Twitch and said, I still had my favorite season ever. And what he was saying was, I had my favorite season ever in spite of that, because we overcame adversity. We overcame people telling us we couldn't succeed without Jason Tatum. Now, the response to this was like, oh, he's selfish. What the fuck is this guy doing going on Twitch? Right after losing, we don't want to see that. We don't want to see you on Twitch. This is from athletes too. We're like, where's your competitive fire? That part I kind of understand, but the sports media made it out to be that this guy is a tone-deaf, selfish player. How can you say that when your team just lost? He countered back and said, look, what I'm saying is we overcame something. We became bonded in the locker room. That's what I'm talking about. You're trying to make it out to be like I'm selfish, but you're not hearing me. And you're choosing to frame this, literally framing me. Like the same way you would frame someone for a crime that I didn't commit. And so you will hear Emmanuel Acho say here, Jaylen Brown or any athlete going against Stephen A. Smith in a verbal sparring arena is like showing up for a gunfight with two pebbles. In other words, dude, you're outmatched. You're not going to win this fight. But my counter is, what if Jaylen Brown is not playing the same game that Stephen A. Smith is playing? Sure. In the game that Stephen A. Smith is playing, just sensationalism, throwing the truth and integrity out the window, putting a spin on things, and controlling the narrative. Yeah, maybe you're outmatched. Jaylen Brown is much younger. He's like half Stephen A. Smith's age. He has no experience in media. He's not a sideshow barker. And again, Stephen A. Smith is very good at being a sideshow barker. I have many times lined up to buy the popcorn with Stephen A. Smith as the sideshow barker. I have lined up for those clips. He is a consummate entertainer, but he does a lot of things in bad faith that are slimy and cruel and unnecessarily harmful to athletes because he's somebody who never played and wants to have power over powerful people. He wants to wield the power of the word over people who wield the power of their hands. Okay? This probably goes beyond this conversation and for some reason has always been that way. Armies fight for people who don't get their hands dirty. Armies fight for religious clerics who tell them that God instructed them or appointed them to be the ones to decide who fights a holy war or what is a holy war and what isn't. The mafia is run by slight little old men for the most part, organized crime. I don't get it. Large, powerful men like to be at the beck and call of men who have a different kind of power. I don't understand it, but apparently it's in our nature. And here you'll see an athlete say, look, you're not going to win this fight. And I'm like, well, Jaylen Brown's playing a different game. What if he's just being straight from the heart? You can't lose when you have your integrity intact. And Stephen A. Smith doesn't care about integrity. His game is not contingent on integrity. What Jaylen Brown is doing is just earnest communication, at least as far as I can tell. So let's play this clip.
Jaylen Brown and Stephen A. Smith are going at it. Jaylen Brown on the stream had some choice words for Stephen A.
Fuck Stephen A.
Oh, wow.
Stephen A, Stephen B, Stephen C. Like, my offer still stands. You want me to be quiet and stop streaming? Well, I want you to be quiet and get off these networks. Because you're not using your platform to do real journalism. You're using your platform to use clickbait, you're using your platform to, let's go back and let's use example A.
Yeah.
So you want me to be quiet? Man, there is such a shut up and play monkey or else vibe to this whole thing, and it's so ugly. Stephen A. Smith actually threatened Jaylen Brown, which he's done multiple times in the past. He's like, do you want me to go there? Do you want me to tell what your teammates, what the organization have said about you? And it's like, dude, it's basically like a teenage girl saying, nobody likes you. But it's much more pointed and it's much more of a weapon than that. Because you can laugh that off and be like, so what? People don't like me. People are talking about you. But here, this has professional consequences. In other words, do you want me to like dish the dirt that I know on you? You don't want me to go there. It's like, wow. This is like a a crime syndicate kingpin, saying, "How dare you speak out of turn at me, boy? I'll show up at your house and like fucking have somebody hang you over a balcony," professionally speaking. This is gross. This is disgusting that storytellers are empowered to do this, that they're empowered to bully the people who question their telling of their own actions. It's like, dude, I was the one who performed this. I'm the one whose story you're telling, and you're telling it wrong. And now you're going to threaten me with like dishing dirt. That is that's about as low of a move as you can make. But watch this. Watch how these athletes respond.
It has some very choice words. Stephen A responded the next day.
Get your ass a studio. You looking like you in some dungeon, a little room or whatever. You making $54 million a year. You're gonna make 57 next year, 61 the year after that, 67 the year after that. You're in the midst of a $304 million contract. Get a studio with a director and a producer.
I have to admit that is funny. That's very funny. I laughed too when I first heard that, but it's a deflection of the point. Like notice he didn't respond to the actual point, which you didn't hear here. But Jaylen Brown said, it's like you told the story as if I'm selfish, when what I was saying was not that I was happy because I was happy oblivious to the fact that we lost. I was happy because we overcame adversity and we had a really close bonded experience of that as a team, which is something you, by the way, don't fucking understand. And he turns around and says, "Get yourself a studio." Right? See, it's like, oh, wait, you pointed this out. Wait, look over there. He doesn't have a studio. Ha, 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 yuck, yuck, yuck. It's like he didn't answer the point. And Stephen A. Smith is very good at deflecting. This is what he does all the time. You know, sticks a dagger in somebody, either from the front or the side or the back, and then dances around that and finds a way to sort of tap dance as if that's not what he's doing, and then you know, makes himself entertaining while deflecting the actual issue.
Calling up clips of mine, the computer ain't even working right, can't even get the full sound up in there. Get that together. That's number one. Stop being so damn cheap. You got the money. Pay.
I mean, Stephen A clapped back
Bro,
with that one. He also had some more words for him. I'll let you guys listen.
But in the end, Jaylen Brown, be careful what you wish for. You really want me to start reporting on that level? You understand? Locker room? How the organization might think about you? How the city may feel about you? How Jason Tatum may or may not have feel about you? Sneaker deals, endorsement deals, the list goes on and on. The season is over, bro. You on Twitch.
You know, as disgusting as that is, as disgusting as I think that is, and like foul to hear somebody use their platform to do that to a professional athlete who has achieved more by the age of 21 than this guy ever will in his life. Fine, you're the number one sports talk guy. But what is sports talk without sports? With the people who play the games. As gross as that is, and as I watch that and I go, man, this is vile. This is a low vibrational thing to do. Like, dude, you're a fucking crime kingpin. That's what you are. You're not even an entertainer. You're certainly not a journalist. You're not a sports talk like clown figure. Or let's be charitable. Sideshow Barker MC. You know, like in the most charitable telling, Stephen A. Smith is like a P.T. Barnum, or the guy who like is on the mic during the circus or during the freak show, right? During the carnival. But this is beyond that. This is the weaponization of media against the very people who pay, who are the bread and butter, who are the workhorses that provide the revenue for that media. You don't have basketball games, you don't have ESPN. So what are you doing? I'll tell you what you're doing. He's drunk on power, and he's showing us what it is, which is why, even though I think it's disgusting and it really burns me up, I'm glad somebody said it out loud. Because I think deep down, whether they are conscious of it or not, this is what the storytellers do at the end of the day. When you question their version of events, they'll crush you to keep their storyteller status. This is where Salman Rushdie's "we have an innate need" metastasizes into something cancerous. Because I see shades of this in music journalism too. John Caramanica would crush Billy Joel if he could with his words. He doesn't have the power quite to do that the same way Stephen A. Smith does with athletes, but he would. He's saying this guy's not consequential. I'm deciding that. So, interestingly enough, though, watch how the athletes respond to this, which shocks me.
Fellas, whose side like that for real? Shout out to Twitch. Whose side are you guys on in this little kerfuffle? Jaylen Brown or Stephen A. Smith?
Okay, this is a stupid commercial. Okay.
Now it's time to go.
No. Sorry about that. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Sorry, there's a commercial playing because I queued it backwards. So I will say, even though I'm chewing, the response from these athletes surprises me because they don't respond how I was expecting.
Trying to fight Stephen A. with words and in a television game is like going to a shootout with a couple pebbles. Jaylen Brown, you outmatched, you overpowered, you out-intellectualed as it pertains to being an orator or a communicator. Jaylen Brown, just challenge Stephen A. to a game of one-on-one, bruh, because you can beat him on a hardwood, but you can't beat him in the studio. So in regards to this, I'm with Stephen A. because, JB, why are you responding? You making $54 million a year. What you responding to Stephen A. for, bruh? Just go hoop.
See, that really surprises me. Why are you responding? Why is he responding? Because he doesn't want to be misportrayed as a selfish player who doesn't care about his team. When according to his account, the reason he said I had my favorite year is because we became closer as a team in the face of this adversity. Is that so hard to understand? I mean, Emmanuel Acho played sports. He played in the NFL. I mean, he didn't play very much. He was a marginal sort of second string player, and he admits that. LaShawn McCoy, who he's sitting next to, was an elite player who just became eligible for the Hall of Fame this year. So they're on different levels, but they knew each other when they both played together in Philadelphia. And it's interesting because in their interactions, they're so friendly with one another. It doesn't come across like LaShawn McCoy doesn't rub it in that they are, they're at the opposite extreme ends of the spectrum. LaShawn McCoy is not, I don't think he would put himself in the greatest ever conversation. I don't think he would do that himself. But I mean, in terms of if you're a kid and you're like, I want a career in sports, what you would fantasize about playing in the backyard is LaShawn McCoy basically got what you would fantasize about. Maybe one hair short of the most story decorated careers you could possibly have. He's one hair shy of that, but in terms of respect, his accomplishments speak for themselves, and he's very respected. And you don't see that imbalance between these two. And then Emmanuel Acho played a handful of games, period. But he got in the league and he worked, and then he refashioned himself as a commentator, as an observer. And I think he does a very good job of riding that line of somebody who did what these people, like, he can empathize with athletes, but also critique their decisions without seeming like he has an axe to grind, because I don't think he does. He's very clear about where he stands in the hierarchy of athletic accomplishments. It doesn't come across as bitter or score settling for his own sense of falling short in what he says about people. And he's not that fast and loose in the way he talks about them or disparages athletes. But it's interesting. He's like, just hoop, bruh. Like, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Don't, you of all people should know this is important. Don't misrepresent me and my intentions, my motives. Don't paint me out to be something I'm not, like a locker room cancer or like a selfish player. So I love LaShawn McCoy. He's one of my favorite broadcasters or sports commentators or athlete turned analyst. But he's like, I don't know why. It's like, dude, how do you not know? So I'm going to play you another clip as a continuation of that same discussion, a clip that happened a couple of days later, because Nick Wright, who's another non-athlete sports talk commentator, who is in his own way wildly successful. I am a fan of his show. He hosts a show named First Things First. What I love about that show, he's on with one of my other favorite sports commentators ever, a guy by the name of Chris Broussard. Chris Broussard and LaShawn McCoy are two of my favorites. And then they host a show together. They're a trio. They host it with a producer turned co-host named Kevin Wilds, also who never played sports. And then they have this rotation of recurring guests. So former NFL wide receiver Greg Jennings, who was very decorated, very accomplished, and NFL coach Eric Mangini, former NFL coach. And the chemistry on the show, you can tell they really like each other. All these characters. There's a real spirit and genuine affinity and affection. They go to each other's houses to watch games, which is, incredible to imagine. And so I really, really love that show. But Nick Wright is somebody who feels free to disparage athletes and snicker and sneer, like, like that player could never think to compare, to measure up. And it's like, dude, like, do you not hear yourself? The way you sound? Like, how dare you do that? I mean, it's really, the lack of self-awareness is staggering. And then Nick Wright, for a long time, trolled the Buffalo Bills fan base in a way that I thought was outright cruel, was just like unnecessarily mean-spirited. He's since turned things around on that. Like, he doesn't do that anymore. And on the Buffalo Bills Reddit group, people actually appreciate him. So he dialed that back a little bit, and I think that was good because it just made him come across like, dude, why are you rubbing salt in the wound to millions of people who are feeling pain? it's like not a good look for somebody who's otherwise really entertaining. Like, I'm a big fan of Nick Wright's. Now, here's what's interesting. Nick Wright criticized Stephen A. Smith and said, look, man, we have to remember we're not the main attraction here. When we start to think we're the story, that's when things get out of whack. And when you start threatening athletes, like, it makes us all look bad. Like, you sound like a mob boss or something. So here is how LaShawn McCoy and Emmanuel Acho responded to Nick Wright's criticism of Stephen A. Smith. I will play you this clip right now and let them take it away.
Nick Wright went on a tangent talking about Stephen A. Smith's beef with athletes, making the sports media world look bad. He said, and I quote, "There's a lot of Stephen A. that I think is admirable and young people can learn from," Wright said. "But these last few years where he has convinced himself, it appears that I don't even know how to say that word, commentariat.
What is it?
Nick Wright. Oh, sorry. It's not on here. It's,
pull the word up. I'll help you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I've got a good IU education.
Commentariat?
Oh.
That's it.
Can you pull up?
Oh, commentariat. Yes, the commentariat. I guess.
Listen, words.
Never heard that word before.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes
I didn't go to college. I dropped out.
It's
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes words. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes we all
got struggles.
We all got,
sometimes it's height. We got to struggle. He said, but the last few years where he has convinced himself, as it appears that we, the commentariat, we, the critics, we, the people who give opinions on the actual games, are equal stars and equally as important as the people who are playing the actual games, is delusional. I had trouble getting through that one.
Yeah, that was right. I know you got called on popcorn read all the time.
Popcorn, yeah, that was tough. No, I'll read it one more time.
Steve A. funny though.
We the critics, we the people who give opinions on the actual games, are equal stars and of equal importance to the people who are playing the actual games, is delusional.
All right, look, Prize Picks is America's number one sports picks app, and it's the
Sorry
easiest
about
way
that,
to win
folks.
cash while you're watching.
I'm just gonna yeah, I didn't have that cue to the right spot. I thought I did, but it gets into the meat of the matter here as once Emmanuel Acho picks us up from his commercial. I don't know why he drops his commercials right at the beginning of, like, when you're on the edge of your seat waiting for the main point, but I guess that's their shtick. You know, that's his tactic to make sure you listen. I always skip over his commercials and get irritated because, like, come on, man, just give us a little bit of the payoff first. All right. No! Oh my God, another commercial. All right, you know what? I'm going to stop this and just let this stupid ass commercial play. So the response, you'll see, surprises me somewhat.
Yeah. You know.
I love this by Nick Wright. I think that's incredible self-awareness. I think when you sit in a seat too long and you get stuck in your own way, you actually think that you're bigger than the athlete. You think you're the star, when at the end of the day, we are in a completely dependent position. We are dependent upon a game being played to discuss it. We are dependent upon news in the sports world to discuss it. You saw, we came on after the Knicks game and we talked about the Knicks game. Jalen Brunson wasn't talking about us. We were talking about Jalen Brunson. Shady talks about this all the time. At the end of the day, it is about the athletes. Truth be told, we're here to service the athletes. We're here to service the fans. I think Stephen A. has gotten so big, at least in his own head, that he starts to think like he's bigger than the athlete. And while you might have more social media followers than the athlete, and hell, you might even have more money than some of the athletes, at the end of the day, there has to be a certain level of humility and knowing, oh, you can't do this without the athletes. Stephen A. started off by going to Zion Williamson. Then he went at Jaylen Brown most recently. He went at Josh Hart, if y'all remember that one as well.
Yeah.
Hell, he went at Lonzo Ball too last offseason, if y'all recall that as well. There just comes, he went at LeBron James. There just comes a point where it's like, Stephen A., remember, these athletes have been what got you paid. They never commented about you. You made a living commenting about them, an incredible living, and you're incredible at what you do. But I feel Nick Wright. Like, it is delusional to some degree to think you're bigger than the athlete.
What? DeAndre Ayton, you think he's bigger than Stephen A. Smith? No. Listen, for everybody else, Nick Wright might be right. But for Stephen A. Smith's a big name. Y'all playing around. I keep it honest. Like, obviously, the players are bigger than Stephen A. Smith, but not everybody. Not because everybody's not a star. And I just gave you an example. DeAndre Ayton is not more popular than Stephen A. Fans probably want to listen to Stephen A. than see DeAndre Ayton play. That's true. Number two, Nick Wright, you got some nerve, homeboy. Because I like Nick Wright, and he does have some good points, but he's a dude that don't respect athletes.
True.
And when you are non-athlete and you speak about athletes because you don't respect them, you can say what you want, however you feel. But a real athlete that speaks about other athletes, he respects the grind, how hard it is to do this, how hard it is to do that. I watched Nick Wright talk about players that win championships and kind of like dims light on some of them players. Like it was easy to do that. Mm-hmm. Or guys that has a really good resume, but maybe not the resume of some of these other great players, and he made shit on some of them dudes.
Mm-hmm. So you get the basic picture. Obviously, Emmanuel Acho's response is more in line with mine. But again, LaShawn McCoy's response really surprised me because he's like, look, Stephen A. Smith is too big. This guy is too big for you to even try to like fuck with. And I mean fuck with in the original sense, not fuck with as in, oh, I fuck with you, I hang with you, and I, I'm on your, I'm on your team kind of. It's funny, in slang, things end up meaning the opposite of what they used to mean. But like, he's too big for you to go after, and it's foolish, and you should respect, as somebody who's trying to strive and become the best at what you do, you should, game should respect game, that you should respect that this guy is the biggest in his field, so you're not really on a level playing field. It's athlete kind of hierarchy shit, where it's like, LaShawn McCoy's responding to like Stephen A. Smith is like, yo, I'm on a bigger level than you, bro. So if you want to, if you want to get into this, you best understand you're out muscled. I don't agree with that at all, obviously, because it's like, well, he's not the one who started it. He's not the one who went out of his way to tell a story about somebody else, about the athlete, that the athlete is saying, wait, that's not fair. I get to defend myself. I get to clear my name. And then the sports commentator people can be like, well, we're just doing our jobs. But it's not your job to sling mud and dish dirt on people, is it? I mean, I guess that's how they think. They think that's their right to do that. They think it's their right to do that. So I was surprised a little bit by Emmanuel Acho's response because it sounds different in tone than his initial response in the other clip. But it's like certain athletes are like, look, he's as big of a media figure as there is. So we respect that because he's accomplished, and you have to be as accomplished as him if you want to take him on. And I don't agree with that. And the moderator there, the guy who reads the introductory clips, he says he argues later because they get into the argument later about, do I want a teammate of mine getting on a Twitch stream after we lost? LaShawn McCoy says this, and I understand this. He's like, look, I want to feel like you care. I don't even want to go to a club or celebrate or do anything after a loss. Like, you understand how bad that feels as a competitor? Do I want a teammate of mine going on Twitch like he doesn't care? And the host there with the Texas shirt, you can see in the shot, he's like, wait, but he's not acting like he doesn't care. He went on the Twitch stream and said, I'm devastated by the loss. I'm paraphrasing. He said, I'm crushed by this. He's sharing that with his fans. And he goes, I like being able to like, as a, the idea that like a little kid can get on Twitch and experience the aftermath of a loss with Jaylen Brown, the star, the main star on the team, in the absence of his co-star there, right? And so he was defending it, and he's like, you guys are reading this wrong. Like Like you're projecting onto him as if he doesn't care about winning. He's showing you how much he cares about winning in this way. It's just a different way than you're used to. Because like LaShawn McCoy and Acho, they say, well, wait a month. Wait a month before you get on Twitch. Like disappear for a while. Don't say anything. Maybe Jason Tatum was in there training after this loss, like to show how motivated he is. And the moderator guy is like, sorry, I don't know his name. He's like, look, everybody responds to things differently. Should he be in the gym like right that next day? He's like, well, he doesn't necessarily have to be in the gym, but he doesn't have to show us how he's on Twitch. Twitch is like something that young kids do. Like it just comes across like he's being too casual. So it's an interesting argument among athletes. But I think it's something that Stephen A. Smith and the sports media people, the non-athletes, have seized upon to invent a story, to create a story that this guy's not motivated, he's tone deaf, he doesn't care about winning, he's selfish. And if you're the one in the ring doing it, if you're the one on the court, that hurts. So I'm going to play you the last clip on this subject that I'll play is a clip of Mike Ryan Ruiz, who is on the Dan Le Batard show. He's a regular, he's one of Dan Le Batard's entourage, but he's like sort of the second in command, I guess, on that show. Dan Le Batard brings this up, and he's like, it's called How Stephen A. Smith's Distorted Worldview Explains His Beef with Jaylen Brown. And Dan Le Batard is like, look, these athletes are saying, Le Batard is saying a lot of what I'm saying. Like these athletes are saying, look, you can't just talk about me this way. Like that's not fair. And then Mike Ryan Ruiz responds with this.
Doesn't it come with the territory? Sports media is as old as sports being televised. And I think that there's a general understanding. Jaylen Brown kind of highlighted that speaking to the media is a part of his contract. All of this helps.
Yes.
Them fighting helps. It helps ESPN. It helps Stephen A. It helps Jaylen Brown. It helps the NBA.
Yes. The answer to your question.
So this burned me up. I'm infuriated with that whole idea. And I think for this guy, Mike Ryan Ruiz, to try to cover for Stephen A. Smith. First of all, the question, doesn't this come with the territory? Why should it? Yeah, you're going to be talked about. Yes, your game is going to be critiqued. But should it come with the territory that you're going to be framed and spoken about in a way that's not accurate on purpose? That you're going to be essentially cast as a villain just because somebody decided to do that? Does that come with the territory? And then Ruiz is saying, he kind of suggests earlier in the clip and then right there a little bit, he's doing this because it helps him. It helps him to mention Stephen A. Smith. I find that, however disgusting I think what Stephen A. Smith did, I find this whole spin, he's doing it for clicks and to chase clout. Like he's actually starting a public spat because it helps his brand. I find it 10 times more disgusting because this guy is caping up for somebody in his industry. He knows, or he should know, he should fucking know that, no, that's not what comes with the territory. You shouldn't, in bad faith, be smeared by people who cannot speak from your shoes, they don't know what it is that you do because they've never done it, who then run with the ball and portray you to the public however they want. If it does come with the territory, it should. What does come with the territory is good faith reporting, speaking to the media, giving them quotes, on the understanding that they're not going to betray that relationship for their own personal gain, that they're not going to warp, and as Dan Le Batard says, distort your actions in the game, because you can't tell your own story in this setup. You can't be the one who inscribes your own place on the temple wall of our memory. So it's left to people like Stephen A. Smith. And I was so incensed by seeing this guy say this on the Dan Le Batard show. This is how I responded on Twitter. And I don't often do this, but I felt it called for it here. Here's what I said. And I tagged all these people. I said, Michael Ryan Ruiz asking, doesn't that come with the territory? Is a devious deflection of the issue. Jaylen Brown is asking Stephen A. Smith not to distort the truth and misrepresent his motives. Ruiz knows that, but lies through his teeth here anyway. I misspelled through. Reframing Jaylen versus Stephen A. Smith as Jaylen clout chasing for attention is a total shitbag move. The real issue is that these motherfuckers are all terrified of losing the power they have over athletes, and they'll say anything to keep that power. Mike Ryan Ruiz poses as a caring progressive, but he's in a dirty, exploitation-driven business. Sports media people have typically been non-athletes who use the pen/keyboard as a way of lording over athletes. Framing the way someone is viewed by the public is power. Now we see the balance changing. It's fair to question Jaylen Brown's intentions with Twitch. Even other athletes have done that. But when Jaylen Brown answers that Stephen A. Smith is making him out to be something he isn't, Stephen A. Smith has to resort to threats because he can't address Brown's actual point. What we see here is a grab for narrative control, the currency of governments, intelligence agencies, and the political bad actors that Mike Ryan Ruiz spends a lot of time moaning about on the show. But he's playing the same game. Control the story and you control everything. Athletes are saying no, and in Jaylen Brown's case, they're saying fuck you. For all of ESPN and the sports media's virtue signaling around progressive issues, Stephen A. Smith's answer to Jaylen Brown has the ring of shut up and play monkey or else. It's a nasty form of blackmail because you can't compete with the person who frames your story. Stephen A. Smith is literally saying, I'll frame you. So fuck you, Mike Ryan Ruiz, for going out of your way to try and throw people off the trail of what's actually going on here. Protecting your own as if you were Stephen A. Smith's corporate lackey. You know the truth. So, I mean, listen, I've said before that there are certain people I wouldn't speak to that way. Mike Ryan is, maybe he can kick my ass. There's definitely a lot of people I wouldn't address that way, but I felt it's like, you know what? There's certain people I will claim like it is okay for me to do that with, because I don't think he would respond with like, oh, I'll punch you in the face. He would talk back to me. He would respond with words to words. But I think it's a low blow move. And I think what these guys are doing is exploitation. And they may pretend to be super race conscious. The Dan Le Batard show and a lot of the people he brings on that show have this very sort of cookie cutter presentation of race. And Stephen A. Smith certainly postures a lot about race. But it's like, you're treating these guys like workhorses. You're treating these guys like show ponies, like animals who don't have the right to defend themselves. Doesn't it come with the territory? Why don't you just take it and keep playing? This is your job. Man, fuck that. Seriously. So, speaking of fuck that, Drake has three new albums that he released on the same day. It is the 21st, so this was like last week as I'm doing this. Iceman, Maid of Honor, and Habibti. I have not heard any of these. And I tried to listen to I tried to watch a video of one of these new songs, and the thing with Drake is he is so aggressively shallow that I cannot stomach his music. I cannot get past even a verse or two before I have to recoil in utter disgust. I think this guy's music is a form of low-grade terrorism. It's like a mind bomb. It's so mindless. It's like a hydrogen bomb that eats away at people's brains. It's so completely shallow and crass and hedonistic and materialistic. And the level of mindlessness, I feel, is almost an assault on the senses. And I could see somebody be like, dude, you listen to AC/DC, what the fuck are you talking about? Or even, I brought up Ultramagnetic MCs, a classic hip hop group. It's like, they're not exactly like lighting the world on fire with saying anything important. You like Kool Keith, who's, I guess my answer to that is that the technique of the people I just mentioned, or even somebody I don't like, another whiny Canadian, The Weeknd. And I don't think Canadian artists, by the way, are whiny by default. I think Drake and The Weeknd are exceptionally whiny, and they tend to moan and groan about their hedonistic lifestyle while rubbing our noses in it. I'm not saying that if you're rich and famous, you have no right to be unhappy. In fact, I think being rich and famous and having no sense of grounding makes people unhappy, and I sympathize with it. But if you're like reveling in the trappings of that lifestyle and you're not saying a goddamn thing in your music and then complaining about it, it's like, I don't have time for that. I'm not moping around in my life and I don't have a fucking penny to my name, right? So it's like, I don't want to hear you moping around in yours. And you have choices. You can be less shallow. But what I was going to say was, even The Weeknd, who I don't like, The Weeknd, at least I admire, like he creates a mood. He's very good at that. Drake's music is like poisonous, like candy that gives you mad cow disease once you swallow it. Like an hour later, your brain will have holes and it will have this parasitic life form eating away at your brain. Now listen, there's that saying, millions of people can't be wrong. This guy has had like almost 2 decades worth of sustained dominance over hip hop. Lots of charts, lots of, sales. They can't be wrong. Even one person, I don't even care if it's millions of people, even one person telling me, no, Saby, I love Drake's music, they're not wrong. What I'm talking about is what's being communicated in the music. I wish I could hear it with you. I wish I could, like I'm going to try to listen to these 3 albums. Because it's like, there's got to be something there. Now, this guy is widely seen as a culture vulture, as somebody who hires ghostwriters, as somebody who doesn't even really have an authentic self and just mimics styles and steals people's approach. He has been known to take people under his wing, other rappers, other up-and-coming rappers. He'll have them collaborate with him or ghostwrite for him. And then he like steals their whole shtick, almost like the monster from the movie The Thing. Just assumes their shape, which I think is artistically fucking gross. But I don't mind him being from Canada and doing hip hop as long as he doesn't pretend to be something he isn't, which he kind of does. And there was a lot of noise recently So let's see. It would have been the 2025 Super Bowl. So in the lead up to the 2025 Super Bowl, so late 2024, I believe it was, Kendrick Lamar and Drake started trading barbs back and forth. They got into a beef. And in rap music, this goes back, to the beginning where you're battle rapping, you're improvising in real time, trying to show that you're the best at it, your technique is the best, and you're dissing somebody else who's on the mic and you're going back and forth. This is a part of the art form. It's like a fundamental building block of what hip hop is. But along the way, it accrued, or even soon, from the beginning, there was also this edge to it where these things could escalate into real violence. And here we are 50 fucking years later, and there's still real violence between rappers. There's still very much a chance that engaging in this against another artist is likely to spill over into somebody being shot and killed. And I feel it's like, when you go to the mall and you see Biggie Smalls t-shirts or Tupac, and the way people talk about this as if it's totally normalized, it's like socially engineered for us now to accept that this is not only a part of hip hop culture and pop culture, but that this is just now something we have to not even bat an eyelash over, that there are large chunks of young Black males for whom living this way is reality. And some of the same people who will get all up in arms about racism will not confront the mechanics, the mechanism by which these messages are just sort of smoothly presented. They're brought to our table as if there's nothing wrong with having a piranha in your glass of water, or a poisonous snake, or here, I'm serving you a boa constrictor with dinner. It's going to wrap around you and strangle you to death here, but don't worry about it. That's just hip hop culture. And so when, the media and the internet just lit up with this Drake versus Kendrick beef, I chose to just completely fucking ignore it. Number one, I think Drake is not an artist. He is a peddler. And I think Kendrick Lamar is an artist. I have some reservations about him, but I totally see him as an artist. I can look at his work and be like, this is 100% an artist. Again, do I think he's a little self-important? Yes. There are other aspects. Do I think it's a little bit overblown? He won a Pulitzer Prize. He was awarded a Pulitzer Prize. And did I think that was a little bit misguided? Not that rappers are not that rap lyricists are not true art that shouldn't be recognized, as high art. But I thought that was a little bit kind of like, all right, this guy's got he's being sort of turned into this Messiah-like figure, and now he's buying into it. I don't like that. But in terms of his musical output, I just immediately go, oh, I respect that. And Drake, to me, feels like the musical equivalent of a Nerds factory, the candy Nerds, those crunchy candies, hit with some radioactive beam so that when the kids eat it, their minds just turn to mush and they turn into zombies or something. So I thought it was beneath Kendrick Lamar to even get into this in the first place. And then I thought it was strange and annoying that so much of the media was talking about it, given the history of rap beefs, and then that it was even given center stage at the Super Bowl. I'm just like, I'm not following all this fucking noise. I don't care about this. Like, first of all, this guy is beneath you. He's not even on your level artistically. So why are you even lowering yourself to take to punch down? He could have just said something more dismissive and be like, "You're not even on my level. Get out of here, little bug." Whatever. Now, I don't know that Kendrick has the sales, and so maybe he doesn't see himself as punching down. But again, I'm of the belief that true confidence doesn't have to tell you how good it is. True confidence means you never have to tell me how good you are at something. You're just busy doing what you do, being good at it, and trying to be better at it, and just staying on your game. You know, once you start telling me how great you are, then I start to think you don't believe how great you are. Of course, this goes against the blueprint, the DNA of hip hop. People want to see this kind of thing, whatever. But I find it interesting that a genre of music where there's so much richness in the lyrics, in what you say, is the centerpiece of this genre. That there are artists like Drake who have runaway success, who are really, really saying nothing. And it's worse than saying nothing. It's like a form of like intellectual antimatter. It's like anti something to say. It's so shallow and reveling in its soullessness that I find it painful to listen to. Now, listen, if you love Drake, let me know in the comments what it is you love about this guy's stuff. I am going to try to sit through his catalog and these 3 records and try to see the light, because I'm like, look, there's got to be something. Maybe it's not for me, but there has to be something in the way this is constructed, right? There has to be something. Now, is this brand of hip hop propagated on purpose to keep us in a state of perpetual nihilistic, hedonistic disregard for life? Now, Drake is not big on talking about shooting people and things like that. He's not on that trip, but disregard for life in terms of how much depth life can have. There are 100 other hip hop artists that you put on Run the Jewels and you're like, right, like it brings you into your life in this really powerful way. It's engaged. It's actively responding to the world. There's a heart and a soul and a voice, 2 voices, and more than one person's heart and soul. But like in that music, it just brims with life. Drake, to me, I feel like I'm like in a zombie movie or something, or somehow mannequins in a store came to life. Or could AI have made Drake's music? Like, is Drake a form of like human AI in a way? Just a replicator. He's the Thing from John Carpenter's classic horror movie. That's what he is, like a shapeshifter. Just sliming his way into another shape. I'm going to try to listen to the music and try to see what's there. Somebody wrote to me, actually, they left a comment on one of my Taylor Swift videos, which I want to read because I hope that people write to me this way about Taylor Swift as well. Or I'm sorry, about Drake as well. I mean, I kind of put them on the same, to me, they're like the same thing. You know, Drake is like the hip hop version of Taylor Swift, just really geared towards getting us to respond to music on the most flimsy level of experience. Like there's no there. There's no actual feeling at all. And again, if you like Drake, let me know. And even if I end up not liking it, even if I'm like, you know what, I like the music, but I can't stand this guy's presence. I can't get around this guy's presence. Or I might listen to it and go, yeah, it's well constructed, but it's very fake. It's very like, it doesn't have passion for like innovating new things. I still want to hear from you. I'm still saying you're not wrong if you love this stuff. It's just his superficial, just soullessness puts me off to the point where I can't hang with it. But here is what somebody said to me about Taylor Swift. Somebody, this is a real user named Galen Wolf, or at Galen Wolf. So let's see. I'm going to share screen. There's Mike Ryan Ruiz, like, oh my God, Saby, you don't like Drake? You know what? And I hope Mike Ryan Ruiz proves me wrong too. I hope he's not going to respond to me. He's too successful actually to respond to my dinky tweet, But if he did, it would be nice if I saw the human being there and he was like, actually, you were wrong, Saby, about what I was saying. Like you responded to me like I'm a caricature and you took me out of context or whatever. I would love for that to be true. I would love it. I would love to see the actual human being who cares, because then that would be reassuring that there are real people who bring a measure of caring and conscientiousness and conscience to this job, that he's not just covering for the number one person in his field because they're closing ranks against athletes and circling the wagons because they know they're like General Custer in this whole thing. I hope that's not the case. I hope I'm wrong about Mike Ryan Ruiz. Just like here, Galen Wolf is saying I'm wrong about Taylor Swift, and I want to read this to you. I find it hard to imagine that someone as thoughtful as you appear to be. Well, let me start again. I find it hard to imagine that someone as thoughtful as you appear to be would spend so much time deep diving into a topic without taking time to become familiar with the topic. So I'm going to assume that you've listened to Taylor's music, even though, to be honest, I find myself feeling as though you are only familiar with her pop radio hits, not her deeper tracks. The Arrested Development critique is worth taking seriously, although it's easy to find mountains of evidence contradicting that view. It's true there is a recurring tendency for Taylor to occasionally dip into youth-coded emotional grammar school imagery. Youth-coded emotional grammar school imagery, childlike revenge fantasies, etc. And she sometimes expands her personal emotional wounds up to mythological proportions. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I don't think it's sometimes. I think that's her whole thing. But anyway, Galen Wolf continues. If that's the foundation of your critique, I don't think it's crazy, although I think it's fueled mostly by the fact that you simply don't resonate with her music and perhaps feel an urge to knock her down a few notches in whatever ways you can. There's also a lingering tendency for society to downplay female perspectives. That's not what's happening here. I said on that episode, I can name 100 or even 200 female artists who I think smoke Taylor Swift. But he continues, or Galen, he or she continues. A knee-jerk inclination to feel that feminine energy is weaker and less worthy of social praise than masculine perspectives. Well, for you, sir, I hand you Drake. And also the 100 at least other female artists who I think have something to say and who don't sound like children. But I'm not reading Galen's comments to knock them or to dispute them, because there's a chance Galen's right, and I'm going to find out. As a broad dismissal of her songwriting, your assertions quickly collapse under the weight of objective evidence. A few representative examples. Songs like Happiness, Peace, This Is Me Trying, Tolerate It, Marjorie, Epiphany, My Tears Ricochet, and Antihero are not adolescent diary entries. Actually, Galen, you have a point there, because Antihero is a song I like. I like that song a lot. And I like it. I do feel an affinity for what she's saying in that song. And I even like the video too. These songs involve grief, moral ambiguity, self-critique, adult relational failure, family memories, shame, fame, and the difficulty of loving someone when you know you are also part of the problem. Man, I got to get better at reading shit on camera. And the difficulty of loving someone when you know you're also part of the problem. So the stronger claim is not Taylor never matured. It's that she often returns to adolescent emotional frameworks, even though she has repeatedly shown she can write outside them. That's a much fairer and more interesting criticism than treating her whole catalog as arrested adolescents. That's a very good point. That, sir or ma'am, is a very, very good point. But I mean, Galen Wolfe is right, because I haven't heard enough of her stuff to say. So if Galen Wolfe is right about these other songs and there being all these other songs in Taylor Swift's perspective, then Galen Wolfe is right. But of course, it's also a highly subjective claim that in its weaker forms risks collapsing into nothing more cerebral than "that's just not my jam." Since a lot of people are unfamiliar with Taylor's deeper discography, I'll list some songs here that I'd offer as evidence against your core critique of Taylor's songwriting. I invite anyone who thinks her lyrics are immature to test the evidence for yourself. And then Galen Wolfe lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 songs. So I have to say, I replied to Galen Wolfe, but I have to say I really, really, really appreciate this response. It's so thorough. It's so well thought out. It's so measured. And it's not like, oh, I'm a Swiftie, so screw you. It's not like a Taylor Swift stan or, fanatics response. It's like, hey, you don't have the right read on this music because you haven't heard enough of it. And you're, in some ways, what Galen Wolfe is saying, you're being as shallow as the critics you're criticizing for just jumping on board with her because you didn't give it enough of a shot. I was like, well, okay. I really, really, really appreciate this response. And I wrote back, I said, well, I'm certainly not going to argue with an answer as thought out and thorough as this one, and thought-provoking too, which I didn't say. I most especially appreciate you providing links to songs. I'll check those out and get back to you. And then Galen Wolfe writes back, thanks. I'm looking forward to your thoughts. So those are coming. So listen, if you love Drake, lay it on me. What am I missing? What am I getting wrong in saying his music is as shallow as it gets? And it's a form of I almost look at it as a form of mind control. Now look, there is the argument that hip hop music and other forms of music, popular music, pop music, is often tampered with by, U.S. intelligence, that the CIA is behind it, that it's part of the, prison pipeline. I've talked about this on the channel before. I haven't really delved into those claims too much. I don't dismiss them because I think it's interesting that Ice Cube, of all people, the former NWA frontman, the lead MC in NWA, has said to Bill Maher that, gangster rap was popularized so that it could feed the prison building, private prisons, and there could be this influx of, young black bodies to fill these prisons. Billy Corgan, who does his podcast on the same network as Bill Maher's, he claims that he was once approached by somebody in the government, and he wouldn't say what they proposed to him to do, but he's like, I know, based on that experience, I know popular music is manipulated by who? I'm asking now, not Billy Corgan, but I would ask, well, who is it? I don't know. I just passed a book on the way here. This is right, like 15 feet away from where I'm sitting. There is a book titled, on the shelf at the library, titled Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s, Tom O'Neill. I don't think it's that inconceivable or strange or far-fetched at all to think that hip hop as a vehicle for shallow hedonistic nihilism and gunplay and drugs and all this stuff does serve a utility for people who might profit from those behaviors becoming widespread. But on the other hand, there is also the argument that that revolutionary music is also tampered with by the CIA. The whole Laurel Canyon allegations, the Merry Pranksters, Ken Kesey, they were MK Ultra subjects. Like they didn't even hide it. It wasn't even a secret. Owsley Stanley, who designed the Grateful Dead's Wall of Sound system, all the speakers and stuff. He's famous for that. I mean, he wanted to dose people. I mean, there's a real creepy undercurrent and potential intelligence presence in music. At the same time, we also are guiding our own appetites with music. And clearly, people love Drake. It doesn't take mind control. I'm not saying you are being mind controlled if you love Drake. You just happen to respond to something that turns me off because of the person or the lack of a personhood at the center of that music. I don't feel a person there. I feel this empty presence who I find kind of revolting on top of being empty. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments. I will leave you with, since we've been going to LaShawn McCoy, the whole time, let's go back to LaShawn McCoy. We might as well. These guys are discussing Jay-Z saying the time for hip-hop beefs is over, and I do not consider them a force for good in the world. Here, and then these guys respond. Here you go.
We got to talk about Jay-Z coming out and saying that the back and forth between Kendrick Lamar and Drake just wasn't really needed. I'll let you guys take a listen.
Again, I love the idea that we got so much music in such a short period of time.
Great music.
Just everything around it was just like, man, it's like taking us a couple steps back.
Yeah.
And we just grown so much that I don't know if, I guess I'm gonna say it, I don't know if battling needs to be part of the culture anymore.
Interesting.
I hate that I had this point of view. I do, because I know what it sounds like. I know what it feels like. I hate it.
How do we feel about Jay-Z's comments? Do we agree
culture
that the Drake and Kendrick beef, didn't need to go to battle?
That's right.
Culture superhero.
You know what? All right, look. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app, and it's the easiest way to win cash.
Dude, you're killing me here. Like, dude, I'm gonna leave this guy a comment. I really appreciate Emmanuel Acho, but dude, you gotta stop. Like, take your fucking commercials out of the punchline. Like, the first grasp people have at a taste of what you're getting at, take the fucking commercials out of there, dude. It's obnoxious. You're making people go fuck Prize Picks because I'm annoyed.
Importantly.
Oh, God. So gross. Now I'm inadvertently advertising for these motherfuckers, too. Shut up. Good. Oh, my God. I hate that this happens. Fuck. This is annoying. All right, so I gotta get around this commercial. These guys will discuss Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and they'll discuss Eminem. I don't know how much of the clip I'm going to play, but they are obviously admirers of what he does. Oh, so let's see. Ugh, this is annoying as shit. Oh, fuck you, commercials. Okay, so here we go.
I don't mind this, right? Because Jay-Z's almost 60 years old. You're asking a 60-year-old man, right? And I know his name is his name, but like my parents is like 60. So how you feel about battle rap? He's like, we don't need it. I get it. Battle rap comes with a lot of, guys being pissed off at each other, can escalate to different things,
Families getting talked about.
Yeah, families. You're talking about this, that, all type of stuff. I don't want to get into the stuff they were saying, but it was real bad, real evil. And like, who wants that? And he's a 60-year-old man. Why would you want that? So I get what he's saying because he had some crazy battle raps. I mean, him and Nas had some wars. Him and 50 Cent had a little this and that. Mobb Deep, he had a lot of battles, a lot of people. Dame Dash. So I don't want to name everybody, you know.
And he was also allied with Biggie in the Biggie Tupac thing.
On his battle and disses. But the thing is, when you're 30, 40, 20, you might get into, I like battle rap, right? That's two lyricists that's going at it, right? And, you know, speak about me, I speak about you. How can we say the bad things about each other and who's going to make it sound the best? I'm cool with that. That's battle rap. Same thing like boxing, but you're doing it with a microphone. So I understand that. But when you're 60 years old, you might not like that. You might want everybody to get along in this rap on a beat and this, you know what I'm saying? So I don't mind Jay-Z doing that. Look at Jay-Z now, though. If you just look at him, he looks like a successful man that's just happy in his own skin.
Yeah.
He reminds me like Bob Marley and you know what I'm saying? This really chilling. So I don't mind that. Now the old Jay-Z, if he said that, I would have a problem with that. Right? Because you rapped with Biggie Smalls when Tupac was on top. I would have a problem with that. But right now he's enjoying himself. He married, got kids. Come on, man.
Yeah.
So I don't mind
I'll agree with it on the outside and on the inside looking out, on the outside looking in. I'll agree with it only because I'm like, Drake did so much for hip hop and for music from 2008 until whatever end date y'all have for Drake, depending on if y'all think Drake was ended. And then I feel like the backlash that Drake got, Drake being one of the cornerstones over the last 12 to 15 years, based upon how Kendrick did them, I'm like, did that help advance hip hop? Did that help advance a music icon of the last 15 years? Like, so that to me is where I'm like, because if you listen to the whole interview that Jay was talking about, it had a lot to do with where we are with social media and whatnot. Yep. Because now everybody piling on Instagram, on Twitter, on all these things, it's not just like the battle starts and stops with the battle. Now it's everybody on social media saying, man, Drake weak, Drake not this, Drake not that, Drake not this, Drake not that. And everybody's saying what Drake isn't as opposed to everything that Drake is. And now all the hits and all the songs and all the summer classics, everything that Drake actually has done is now to some degree been making a mockery of in perpetuity. Well, so to me, that's where Jay, if you listen to that kind of the full context.
And I heard what you're saying, and I guess what Jay-Z's saying, but like hip hop is not a friendly game though, right? It's competitive. It's one king on top. How this whole thing even started was supposed to be three kings. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? It's supposed to be Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole. Jermaine. And, you know, Kendrick felt otherwise. And he spoke on it. And this one thing I did like about the battle is that Kendrick put everything back into perspective. Drake is dope, though. Dope lyricist, one of the best artists of all time. But a lot of stuff that Kendrick said is true. Like, yo, you came over here and stole the culture. If you go back to the first time you ever heard Drake, not even rap, talk, right? He came as a video. And I remember Lil Wayne said, hey, I signed Drake. I want him to be yourself. Be yourself. Don't come over here rapping about stuff you know nothing about. Be yourself. And when you watch him, it was cool then. Then you watch him now, it's like he taking everybody's style and using it for himself, which is cool, smart. Yeah. Right? Like if you never even met Drake, you met him now, you didn't meet him back then, you would think, oh damn, you
two different people.
You from Houston? Where you? Yeah. But no, you not. You from Toronto. And then when he's in Canada, he talks like he's from Canada. Yeah. And he's over.
Yeah. So then he dropped some Caribbean stuff too. Like, yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Leave it to Shady McCoy. This is why he's one of my favorites. You know, I'm glad he said that about battle rap because I'm responding more to everything around it, but he as an athlete, as a competitor, he really appreciates people butting heads to show who's going to come out on top. And I can totally appreciate that. I mean, I don't need it in hip hop. I would rather people do that with ideas, tackling issues. And I like when people do features on each other's records and are all pulling up, pulling the same way. But I hear what he's saying. It's interesting too that they go on to discuss this whole Drake stealing from people, like copying ideas and like embodying other people's whole personas almost. And then they argue back and forth, and Shady's like, it's cool, it's smart, like you heard him say, and he's a dope MC, but what Kendrick said is true. And then Acho's like, well, yeah, but he did so much for hip hop. And then they debate that back and forth. It's, you know, when you're talking about Drake, I mean, these conversations are never far from, you know, they're right there. You know, you almost can't even look at him without considering that. Even somebody who admires him, like Emmanuel Acho, will acknowledge how much he just lifted from other people. And so that's hard for me to get around. But again, they all like his music anyway, in spite of, they go on to have this like whole conversation about it. And they're like, you know, they'll still rock his shit. So there you have it. You know, and there are artists like that who I, over the years, have loved. One of my favorite bands ever, Stone Temple Pilots. I thought they were complete corporate shape-shifting, like mannequin raiders of, you know, like I initially saw them as totally 100% insincere at what they were doing, and I loved them anyway. And then I eventually saw them as not that. But when they first came on the scene, my God, I was just like, wow, they're really, you know, a lot like Drake. Scott Weiland would, on their first record, he sounded like 4 different people. There's a song where he sounds like Eddie Vedder. There's a song where he sounds like Axl Rose. There's a song where he sounds like Chris Cornell. And then there's one more that I'm skipping, that I'm missing. But it's like, wow, this guy's like a total chameleon. And then I eventually saw them as something different. So you can like that stuff anyway. And who knows? Maybe because of Galen Wolf and somebody else who comments and like, no, check this Drake, this song. Who knows? You may be seeing me on here as a fan of these people grudgingly after all these years, but we'll find out. Let me know in the comments what you think and weigh in on any of these topics. I'd love to hear from you. Do hit the like, subscribe, notification buttons. If you see a hype button, I would love for you to hit that. That really helps the channel. And let's see, check out my Substack. Contribute to the show, buy me a coffee, make a donation, Cash App / $ feedback def. And yeah, that's about it. For Feedback Def, I am Saby Reyes-Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. Thanks for hanging with me. Over and out.